Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Signs in the heavens. We're going to just have a look over this. I tried to keep this series, I tried to keep the message actually to one. I can't do it, I'm sorry. It's going to end up being 3 parts. So we're going to focus today a little bit on what are the heavens for and why does it matter. The next week we're going to have a little bit of an interesting session where we're going to look at this thing called the pre-tribulation view and what is dispensationalism, because sometimes I mention dispensationalism and some people's eyes gloss over. You know, what the heck is that? And what you may not know is that many of you in your journeys to date, in your walks, have been infected by this form of theology. You may just not know it and you haven't put a label to it and all that kind of stuff. But it is one of the most deceptive forms of theology that I know occurring in the body. And one of the reasons for that is this. When something looks blatantly nasty or evil or wicked, it's easy to tell, isn't it? Right? But when something shows up with a smile on its face and dressed well and, you know, has a bit of knowledge and talks nicely and things like this, that tends to be something we can welcome into the house. I think of dispensationalism. Has anybody heard of the story of Troy? You know, where they bring the Trojan horse in? Whatnot? Okay. When these things creep into the body, and these ones did sort of in the early 1800s, dispensationalism came to its popularity and has essentially brought the Trojan horse into the house and has infected the body very widely. Okay, and it's unfortunate, but to talk about subjects like we're about to talk about today and to understand the meaning for this, unfortunately, before we get to actually discussing what happened or what's coming, we need to actually deal with these things because they've brought in things like this modern day rapture doctrine. Has anybody ever heard of the rapture? Okay, there's a modern doctrine that comes around this event and referring to the translation of the Latin, which is rapturo, and there's a lot of stuff that's come into the body concerning this particular doctrine, and so we need to actually address these things because when we do look at what happened in the heavens, or the Shamayim in the Hebrew, in 2 BC, we're also going to look at what's happening in the heavens both this August and September 2017. What frustrates me is I'd like the luxury for anybody listening or for us to be able to not even have to discuss why this matters or what is some of the stuff that's in the house. But is anybody starting to realize that when you're trying to speak to somebody, and you may have encountered this, have you ever been excited about something you're learning or understanding, or the Ruach's getting you to a place of really getting something, and you're trying to share that with a fellow believer, and they're just like, what are you talking about, or I don't want to know, or whatnot. Has anybody encountered that? If you've encountered that, what's going on is they're experiencing the battleground of their mind. And it's this leaven in the house. It's this spiritual theology from the precepts and traditions of men. When I use the word Christian Talmud, okay, Talmud being teachings and precepts of men, we often only think of Jewish Talmud, don't we? Right? But the Christian Talmud, or that side of it, would be all the stuff we can find online in our DVDs and books and bookstores and everything else. Now, is there truth in both forms of Talmud that sit on both sides of the river? Yes. But we often, on the Christian side, will point and go, oh, well, the Jewish have Talmud. Not even looking in our own rear mirror at the thousands of books and DVDs that are being pumped out. Do you see the point I'm making, right? We have just as much Talmud. In fact, arguably even more from that side of the river. So it's easy to always point in another direction. Now, most of us here have been on a journey that have come from the Christian riverbank. And we're trying to get in the river from that side. So this is why we're going to address some of these doctrines and dispensationalism and all this kind of thing. And talk about the 70th week of Daniel and all this kind of fun stuff. So next week's going to be kind of interesting for some of you because I'm going to finally explain to you what I mean when I say the word dispensationalism. And you'll find a little bit of the history of that interesting. But not only that, you'll see the importance of what it is that you're actually coming against sometimes. And you don't even know it. And you'll just think somebody's not listening to you, but what you really may not know is that they've spent a lifetime in their journey actually being infected by this stuff. And then we'll just finish up with the actual events themselves. Okay, so 3 parts. So what is it for? Why does it matter? Then we're going to look at what's affecting our way to view this. And then we're going to then look at the actual things that are coming. So that when we go to look at it, hopefully we've removed all of this battleground of the mind. Does that make sense? I'd love the luxury just to go straight to part 3. But there are people listening that are going to be screaming. Did anybody see the program on Torn Made Flesh last week? Yeah, we were speaking just in conversational style of, and it was titled "The Rapture Will Not Happen" on September 23rd, 2017. And that's it's a little bit of a provocative title, but it's more to make a point to people. But I promise you that people's leaven screams in their head when they listen to that type of a conversation and things like that, because their whole life they've been taught a certain doctrine, and now they're very excited about a sign that's coming in the heavens. So yours truly and others, obviously, we get shot for even, dare we challenge that sacred calf, that golden calf. And whether you know it or not, you're on a walk where you're going to be challenging golden calves constantly, and this is a big one. And so the Father's put it on my heart as a responsibility for everybody here in the fellowship to, and I mean this sincerely, it's been truly weighing on my heart that the Ruach has made it clear that that I have a responsibility to actually share it with you, and that we get a balanced and mature perspective as to why. And understand these matters, because there's lots of interesting stuff going on out there right now, whether you know it or not. So anybody who knows me long enough knows that Proverbs 25:2 is my favorite proverb, and is the glory of Elohim to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings to search out a matter. Okay? We don't have to worry about who Elohim is, right? But the honor of kings to search out a matter. That's an interesting statement. Do you know the promise for what will eventually be selected as the bride of Messiah and will be part of the ruling and governing and council of the next age to come? That they're referenced, there are 2 titles. They have 2 titles given to the governance that the bride of Messiah receives. And what is it? Kings and priests. Yep. So this is an interesting thing. You mean that Elohim conceals things for us to discover? See, we don't often think of it in that way. We've gotten used to, revelation, right? And then revelation is just something we make up because I had a thought in my mind, and then, of course, that thought immediately equals that it must be God. Not that it could be the fact you ate too much pizza the night before. How do we know whether we are hearing from the Father or not? Is it just because, I think I did, therefore I did? Is that the standard? Is the standard the battleground of my mind, then answering with the battleground of my mind? Because if that's the standard, we're in trouble, aren't we? Because everyone's hearing from God, and they're all getting their little messages. When somebody goes and murders somebody because God told them to, were they hearing from God? How do you know? You'll know because the Word will say something. And then you'll also be able to have a body that brings some accountability and bring in some discipleship and things like that. We are to establish things with 2 or 3, create a witness for us to understand. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So when we search matters out, the only point I'm making here is that, yes, he's concealing something for us to search out, but we are to search it out whose way? His way or our way? His way. So we need to understand what his way looks like, and he came and patterned this, and Yeshua made it very clear. So, these things that he did, we need to really take seriously. Some of you are sitting here saying, well, I've heard that before. Great. But do you actually put it into your life? Is this actually a practice of your life? Or are you still listening to the little voices going on in your head and saying that that's God? Because there's a whole bunch of people doing that in the body. That's not a safe place. Everybody's hearing for Elohim according to them and not according to anything that establishes what would be considered to be a true witness on any matter. So I would suggest to you that while we're searching out things, we want to make sure that we are confirming revelation that is truly of Him in a safe and balanced manner. And again, as a fellowship, that's the journey that we're on. We've got the best little fellowship in the world. Did you know that? We have the best people in the whole body, and Yah assembled them all in one place in the world. That's right. Everybody listening is going, oh, wait a minute, I got something to say about that. And what they need to do to anyone listening is you need to obviously move over to New Zealand and come and live in Wellington. And that prophecy will keep being fulfilled. All right. Why should we care? Why should we care? All right. The heavens and His appointed times matter. Okay? We're going to stress that element here today because even though I'm dealing with some, and have been led to raise this as a matter because there is some shenanigans going on in the body, doesn't mean, right, we use the term here, we don't want to throw the baby out with bathwater. Sometimes we can do that, and this is happening in a big way, and it will happen in even a bigger way come September 24th. Okay, for those who are looking. Now, for anybody who's asleep in the body, okay, all right, most believers here, and we actually discussed this in our men's midrash last week, most are asleep. You agree? Right? So there's no question. Most believers right now, on average, don't have a clue that there's something happening in the heavens in August and September. We're right on the heels of this, by the way. So this is why we got to get this done and why we're doing our interruption into the journey of Ecclesiastes. Once we're done this, we'll get back and finish the last fourth of Ecclesiastes so that we can get that out. In the All Its Vanity series, but we're doing this interruption because we need to actually get it now, well ahead of time, because you're gonna see, if you have not been sleeping, you're gonna see more and more fervor. When we were doing the program as of last week, at that time, a week ago, just a general search of rapture in September 23rd, 2017, produced almost 2.1 million activity on the internet. So somebody's not asleep. Okay? Some are aware. Some are aware and won't look any deeper because they've been burnt or they don't have an understanding as to why they need to look any deeper. Some are aware, and many of these people are what I call sort of, the YouTube diviners or internet diviners. They're aware, but they're bordering on divination. And this is talked about in a little bit more detail in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and the Torah. So Leviticus 19 and Deuteronomy 18. I want you to take serious this statement. These are warnings in Scripture not to play with something. Okay, to the degree that it's being played with. So discussing awareness, discussing the wise, respecting the heavens, having reverence for His heavens and appointed times. This is all good stuff. But who alone knows the beginning from the end in the time domain? Yeah, He created it. Yeah. So why do we get to predict the future? Does anybody in here get to predict the future? Do you get to predict the future as it relates to His moedim, His appointed times? Do you think that if we started to get into that we might be breaking Torah itself? And I'm telling you that there is becoming dangerously close in this thing. On many well-intended believers are now getting dangerously close to breaking Torah or doing it. Now, they may not know they are, and it might be the best of intent. But I've said it many a time, say it again. If this was on good intentions, we wouldn't need to even be here, would we? I don't know of anybody in this room that has bad intent towards one another. And most of the people that I've been seeing and witnessing on dealing with the subject matter right now on the internet, I don't think they're bad intent. However, few are being wise. Few, and I mean few. I don't know if this is a reflection of the state of the body. and just how sad things are getting, if it's a reminder to us of the state we're going to be in the end times before the return of Messiah. Indeed, Messiah seemed to intimate that he'll be struggling to find the faith on his return. But apparently we're in really good shape. Why would our Messiah make that statement? You're alive right now, and if we're in the end times, do you know what his words are for this body right now on this planet? I wonder if I'll even find the faith. How comfortable does that make everyone? That should be sobering for us, because what is the faith? If he's struggling to find it, I thought we've been getting this whole faith thing right our whole lives, haven't we? Sure, aspects of it, but it's also had a lot of Talmud in the house. That's why we're doing part 2 next week. If you don't know any of this stuff, you're going to find some of it interesting, so you know what you're dealing with. And the idea of unleavened, the appointed time of the week of unleavened every year is that we look in our own mirror of our own lives and go, Father, what is it that needs to be removed from the house? Because if it doesn't get removed from the house, it creates pride. And that pride, eventually, if it's based on wrong doctrine, will create hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is the leaven that's got to leave our lives. This is where I get a bit personal as I was putting this sort of series together over the last few weeks. It's been hard for me, and I'll be honest with you, not to get frustrated or resentful of having to do this. I know that there's many people in this room I do not need to do this. You kind of know this. Some of you don't yet. Again, the same could be said for people listening. And this is probably just my human donkeyness coming out, but I honestly had a moment last week where I was putting stuff together going, why do I have to go through this? Why do I need to do this? And I'm having this conversation in my spirit really with the Father, and I have to say, I did get resentful. I get sick and tired of constantly dealing with this stuff that never leaves the house of believers. Why did I have to? I got a little bit resentful even doing the program on Torah Made Flesh. And so why we even had to call it, the rapture will not happen on September 23rd, because there's a part of me that is sitting there going, why don't we grow up enough that we can get past these discussions and we can get straight into just discussing what's actually going to happen? Why can't I just go straight there? Because there would be people in this room that are infected by something you do not understand yet, as well as those listening, that if I tried to do that, the battleground of your mind will be lost. This is why we have Midrash. This is why we go on this walk. This is why we have the week of unleavened bread to reflect and look at, to look in the mirror of our lives and to understand our own hypocrisy and what affects us. Because we are fallen and we are human. And we all need to get the leaven swept out of our houses, right? That means all of us. Just because I'm up here sharing this right now doesn't mean there's not leaven every year and things that have got to go. And the Father reveals it every year. Has anybody had leaven revealed to them every year as you've been on this journey? Isn't it interesting? You just think, well, I'm good now. I'm sorted now. I don't need to do this unleavened thing anymore. Wait till you see what the Father reveals. And you might think it's a little thing, but all of a sudden it comes out. Or made aware to us, and you think, wow, I didn't know that was still in the house. So we all are on this journey, and we need to learn how to love and walk with one another as we experience this. And so my resentfulness and frustration, I almost felt a little bit like I was being corrected and reproved in the Spirit. It was like, Curtis, who are you to be getting frustrated and resentful of these things? Like, who really? And you kind of sit there, and I put my head in shame, and I just continued on, and I just like, yeah, actually, who am I to be making those assessments, right? But I'm human, and sometimes it gets frustrating. But then, does anybody here think we frustrated the Father over our course of our lives? I'm thinking, we better learn how to treat each other as He's learned to treat us, so we wouldn't even be here right now. So, just a little bit of a reminder, but I wanted to be honest and share this with you because sometimes you may not know a little bit of the testimony behind my journeys when it comes to dealing with things like this. And I wanted to be honest and open with you about it. The body's now playing essentially, and this is the reason why we're really doing it, with the signs in the heavens and the appointed times. The waters are being muddied at this level. And I'm going to tell you the difference, and comes down to, I'll never forget why we're talking about this today. There have been, over the centuries, and ever since Yeshua went and returned to the Father's house, since that time, there has been various ways to all view when's Messiah coming back or what's happening in the body. And indeed, every century, somebody's claiming that, Yeshua is going to return on such and such date. In a very big way, as we've been leading up to the times we're in now, and as we do get closer to the return of Messiah, these things are escalating in the body. It's becoming more and more prominent. And so you've got people, everybody aware of you remember a gentleman named Harold Camping in 2011? He was convincing people that this is it. And, I'd be looking at stuff like that. And, I told people at that time, I said, don't even listen to the man. This is ridiculous. Now, this is a man who had a lot of knowledge. If you'd listened to his teachings and things like that, and you didn't know much yourself, you would have gone, wow. But the dates he was predicting didn't have anything to do with the Father's timelines. How could I have been so confident in knowing that this man was deceived as a teacher? Because Curtis just knows everything? Yeah. It did not fit what we're supposed to understand biblically. And if you step away from that pattern, it is easy to see the charlatans. Okay? You can understand the false teachers. Do you know that in 1988, there was people that were coming out, 88 reasons why Jesus returns in 1988? And all this stuff got broadcast around. Some people will be here too young to understand this. Others would remember what I'm saying. Doesn't matter. This stuff gets a lot of hype, and then all of a sudden what happens? The day comes and goes, and then what happens to all the people? So we got crying wolf. Now, I didn't necessarily used to care about people crying wolf like Harold Camping in 1988 and 88 Reasons, all that kind of stuff. Because there was something they weren't doing at that time. The body hadn't woken up yet to the reverence and the significance of the moedim or the signs in the heavens. So these people are just, if you knew what you were looking for, at best, just are being silly. They're just being silly to those who understood these things. And you would look at them and you would go, this is ridiculous. You mean to tell me that you all of a sudden have got this special revelation that you're going to give to the body, and it doesn't at all even align with how the Father told you to look at Bible prophecy? By the way, does everyone realize that the Father has taught us how to view Bible prophecy? Yeah. And all Bible prophecy points to who? Yeshua. And we're supposed to dress rehearse it when? Every year. Wow. You mean he made it that simple? Oh, can't be. Don't I have to buy 50,000 prophecy books and listen to all these people that know all this stuff because they know all the secret knowledge of the Messiah? How many have been raised with this? And these people get put on pedestals and, they're the ones that know the secrets. You comfortable with that? The ones who know the secrets. And the dates come, and they go, and guess who's getting put on the stand as this continues to happen? Yeah. Our very plan of salvation. And people are getting turned off, or whatever it is, or their faith's not based in much. The days come and go, and all of a sudden that's it. They throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't want anything more to do with this. Is this important? You better believe it is. There's been so many false starting guns so far that it has turned people away from their faith. Does anybody think even one sheep being turned away from their faith because of false date setting would be an important matter? Okay. Some of the stuff going on right now is happening again. Here's the difference. They're now playing with the appointed times and with the signs of the heavens. These are actually things the Father did say to look to. Now that's one thing when you're making up stuff in your own brain, playing upon people's ignorance and preterizing a body. That's a different matter, and you're doing that based on your own whatever you want to come up with. It's quite another matter when you are actually doing it with the thing we were supposed to look to understand these things. Do you see the difference now? Now we're seeing that happen in the body. This time, it's serious business. This is not a joke now. as we try and bring people to an understanding of the Father truly trying to teach us what prophecy is about, the day and age we're living in, how serious it is, and all of a sudden you start to teach them about the appointed times. Oh, but they heard some message from some person who related that on the 23rd of September 2017, which is the feast of Yom Teruah, or trumpets, and it didn't happen, and they threw out the importance of the moedim because they didn't know anything about it, and the only thing they ever heard or learned about the Feast of Trumpets was because some guy on YouTube said the rapture was going to happen, and that fit with their theology. Now all of a sudden you come to them and try and say, we should honor these appointed times. What do you think they got for you? Yeah. Oh, I've looked at all that stuff's rubbish. Do you see now, while we're discussing this? This is attacking the thing we were supposed to understand. So is it serious? Yes. It's very serious. Now we're at the most serious we could possibly ever be. 88 Reasons in 1988 was not serious. We were not playing with either of these two things. If you wanted to listen to people doing that kind of stuff, you're just being silly or stupid. But now there are people using the actual thing, and they don't look silly or stupid, especially to those who don't have a deeper understanding. They actually look very credible. As in the days of Noah. Famous passage here, I'm quoting from Matthew 24, 38, 39. As in the days of Noah that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. Does that describe a nuclear fallout, great tribulation setting? And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So also shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. This statement here is from our Messiah, and he is saying very clearly that to a certain group of people, possibly unbelievers, it's business as usual. And then something's going to happen. That's the way our king described it would be before his coming. Does anybody think he had a good handle on that? Okay, so let's take that serious. So let's not buy into the nuclear winter scenarios. It's a bunch of fear-mongering going on. That's ridiculous. We cannot go there scripturally. That doesn't mean that we may not get scared because of the wars and rumors of wars and because of the things that can happen financially, whatever. But do not think that there's some end of the world. Anybody heard it's the end of the world? Okay, there's nowhere in Scripture that talks about the end of the world. About the end of the age. And there'll be the end of the age as far as the time domain goes at the end of the millennial reign. But don't worry. Where we are right now, as broken as it may be, guess what? It's the destiny, and we learned this and we're looking at Ecclesiastes or the Koheleth. We learned that things were going to be made what? Refreshed, restored, anew. Don't worry. The world's not going to blow up. You're okay. But that doesn't mean there's not some things we need to be aware of, and be watchmen along the way. Okay. So Yah's calendar is not the Pope. So there's all the signs in the heavens. So what are they for, right? We all enjoy looking at them, and that's great. Even the broken version is beautiful. We can all agree that. But we don't really understand why this whole calendar sits in play for us. The solar nature of it with the sun, the lunar with the moon, the agricultural. This is even things like the barley coming into Aviv, things like that. And he counts his calendar as what? Month 1, day 1, month 2, day 2. That's complicated. His calendar is actually deep and profound. It is absolutely reliable, and it is genius in its simplicity. But we think it's like we're learning all this new stuff that's really hard because of what? Because we've got something else in our head. Not because this is more difficult. Do you understand? Yeah. But you often hear that. People go, oh, I can't learn all this stuff. No. just get this out of the house, and you're going to see that you have a deeper, more simple, more beautiful picture to discover. By the way, just because we're operating on the Pope's clock, okay, that came to us, does not mean Yah is. Do we understand that? So I'm not picking on the Pope or even necessarily Catholicism here, but they have established what we are operating to under what's known as the Gregorian calendar. And that's what we've all gotten used to. Now that's fine. We get through our day, our week, we look at it this way, and we start doing all this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that I'm even referring to the Gregorian calendars even when I say a date like September 23rd, 2017, aren't I? That statement in and of itself is not biblical. That's Gregorian in nature. Okay? But we're having to speak at this so that we can understand each other. But I'm just wanting to make the point here, that's not Yah's language. That is our language. Okay? The appointed times, the moedim. So he's got this incredible prophetic dress rehearsals for us to understand from the one who told us to rehearse them, the one who does know the beginning from the end, the one who is, anybody think anybody's better at prophecy than Yah? He's the best at biblical prophecy there is, right? Who wants to learn how he views biblical prophecy? Right? Now, we can know that's correct. I don't know about getting through these thousands of DVDs and books and whatever else and YouTube diviners, but I do know one thing. If I learn his way of viewing prophecy, I'm going to be correct. Not because I know it all, but because who does? He does. Exactly. We were told to honor these in the same year, right? In order, within the same year, his pattern. To dress rehearse the moedim. And they all point to guess who? So Bible prophecy from the Father is all about your Messiah. Isn't that nice? Bible prophecy always points. Do you know what the majority of Bible prophecy right now, especially in the dispensationalism camps, guess what who their Bible prophecy seems to be focused on? Anti-Messiah. Isn't that interesting? So we're going to focus on the anti-Messiah, yet Yah's telling us to focus on the Messiah. Who would like to focus on Messiah or anti-Messiah? Which one? Take your pick. You can go with the diviners or you can go with Yah. Okay, Matthew 24, 43, 44. So we got this parable being given to us. Who was given the parable? Who was giving it? Yeah. So again, these are words to be looking for. But know this. So 24, verse 43 to 44. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come. Again, allusions here to actually a scenario that was played out in the temple, especially at night. Nonetheless, we're not going to go there today. But he would have what? Watched. Are we being instructed to watch? So when anybody says to you, oh, none of this matters, we're going against the words of who? Okay, so we got to be careful about this. So the question is not whether we should watch. The question is how we should watch. Does that make sense? Okay. And would not have suffered his house to be what? Broken up. How many denominations we got in just Christianity alone? How'd that happen? Hope that gives you some insight. We're not doing it his way. Welcome to the breakup of the house. Do you understand? Continuing on here, Matthew 24, 45. Who then is faithful and wise? Anybody faithful and wise in here? People aren't so quick to put their hands up. Who then is a faithful and wise servant who his master has made ruler over his household? Who's going to be ruler over the household? With him? Who's going to be ruler over the household with him? A selected bride. Oh, so you mean the bride is going to be faithful and wise. Where does wisdom come from? Where does he instruct us in his righteousness? The Word in Torah. A faithful teshuvah and wise servant, a repentant. Well, just think about what this is saying. Because you all want to claim to be the bride, right? We all like that title, don't we? Who is master and is ruler over his household. To give them what? So what is the bride apparently going to do? Is she going to give milkshakes in due season? To give them meat in due season. Does anybody know there's a lot of milk being delivered out there right now behind pulpits all over the world? We just, that's all we're going to give them is milk. Just keep giving them milk. If your child was, say, 10 years old and they were still getting a bottle, with the little nipple on it and, well, how, do you think they'd enjoy that? How about you? When you think of dinner, don't you just want one of those bottles with the warm milk in it? Is that what you long for when it comes to evening dinner time? Why are we accepting this spiritually? Why are we lining up so we can have our milk? Sunday after Sunday, all the time, it's going on everywhere. Just give me my bottle. I pay good money to have my ears itched and have my little bottle of milk. Don't you try and give me anything else. Does that sound harsh? Believe me, it's not as harsh as the words of Yeshua. I'm not anywhere near how serious he dealt with these matters. Let's get going. Oh. Matthew 24, 48, 49. How harsh did he get in this analogy or this parable he's giving? But if the wicked servant, if I called somebody who was another believer a wicked servant, how well do you think that would go down in the modern church? Would I be calling them, would that be unloving? Is Yeshua unloving? But I'd be accused, that's just terrible. That's negative, Curtis. It's negative. Okay, well, I won't leave it to me to be negative. I'm just decided I was going to read the words of my King. How's that? So you want to call somebody negative right now? Who are you going to call negative? So how comfortable are you now pointing the finger at Yeshua on how he seems to address not looking at this? The wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed. Whoa. And begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards. Are there people that are going, I've heard it all before. Jesus is supposed to be coming in this and this. They go on and on. And what do? They're back to their old lives. Anybody here know people that were walked in the faith, maybe say 10 years ago, and you're looking at their lives now, and what are they doing? What happened? Were they actually ever built on the rock in their faith? You see, did they ever receive instruction in righteousness? Were they ever in the Torah? Were they ever, honoring the modems? Were they ever getting any of this? No. Boy, some harsh judgment now on who were their teachers. That's scary. Matthew 24, 50, 51. The master of that servant will come on a day when the servant does not expect him. Whoa. You mean there's some people that are about to get a nasty surprise on the return of Messiah? And when this stuff all starts going down? And at an hour he does not know. Now you don't know this, but that's an allusion to an appointed time. Does anybody know what appointed time that's actually alluding to? Trumpets. See, if we know the Hebrew idioms, we actually know what we're reading in Scripture. But none of us grew up understanding the Hebrew idioms or even and how this has been translated in the English. So when you read that, up until maybe recently in your walk, did you ever think, appointed time of Yom Teruah? No. Now you read it, and how easy is that to spot? Unbelievable. You know what your king is actually saying to you because you understand the language. Just as much if I said to you what we grew up in, honoring the pagan holidays, like Christmas, if I said to you, I'm going to show up the day that we open the presents under the tree. Would there be any doubt to anybody in this room, having grown up in the Western world in a Greek Western environment in the last 2,000 years, if I said to you, I am showing up on the day that you open the presents under the tree, what day have I just told you I'm going to be there? Christmas. So if I showed up at New Year, I would be to you what? A liar. See, that's how clear you would understand that message. Do you think that they could talk to each other with the same understanding if they had been raised with honoring what they were supposed to year after year? Do you think they would have the luxury to speak to them just the same way I did to you regarding a celebration called Christmas? Of course. So just because you didn't grow up with that understanding doesn't mean they didn't. Do you understand the point I'm making? But we're putting our faith, and we're getting our faith, I'm reading to you from the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. So we're quite happy going, oh, well, I've got a New Testament, that shows me my faith. But do we really know what we're reading? We'll claim it as our faith, won't we? But we don't understand what we're reading, and because we don't understand what we're reading, we then interpret it through what lens? Our own lens, which has been shaped by what? Rome. Unbelievers. Modern Western civilization doing all of this stuff. That's not an attack on you or me or anyone else. This is what we were raised in. But that doesn't mean it operated according to the Father's ways. And if we didn't get raised in that environment, is it possible that we're not seeing things as a result? Yeah. That's all. It's not a criticism. It's not, I got to feel bad because I was born under this environment. No, he knew what you were going to be born into. What he's finding out is, do you care to come out of it? See the difference? So what is the main purpose for the heavens? I always do like to show this. Any of you know me. This is our illustrator, Tom Barnett's son. And he asked his son, when Tom started to wake up to some of this stuff, coming from a Christian Catholic background, I think, or it might have been his wife. And either way, he started to take these things seriously. And when he did, he was like, oh my goodness, this is really interesting. Discovering how wonderful it is that you've got so much more to your faith than you could ever possibly know if you're willing to just look a little deeper. So he asked his son, and he kind of had this cartoon out of his Little Meister's cartoons, and this one's actually based on his son, although most people don't know that, but we do because we work with Tom. And he's our illustrator in Bible Pathway Adventures. And he's got here, in the conversation, he recorded, this is actually a drawing of the conversation with his son having come to life. He's saying, why do you think the stars were created, Chester? So he's saying this to his son here. And this is how he answered. I think it's God's way of saying that he'll leave the lights on until we come home. Isn't that neat? And what are we supposed to watch for? The heavens. 7 years old. He's answering something in an incredible way. He's not sitting here having all the conversations we are, looking at whatnot. He's just going. He acknowledged who was responsible for them. What's acknowledged in that? The Creator, right? And he's even said, well, I can't think of anything else, but they must be there to help us get where? Home. Isn't that neat? Anyway, I just love that sort of thing. So we're not to buy the lies, okay? The gospel, the true gospel message, has actually been written in the Shamayim, or the heavens. Now that message that's there started to be known as this thing of the ancient Hebrews would call it the Mazzaroth. They started to understand and know a story behind it. There's many players in this story, what we call the constellations. But there's also in the stars what they call the wandering stars. And they're neat. We call them what? Planets. And so they would watch and understand these as it was passed down from generation to generation. We know it now as the Hebrew Mazzaroth or Mazzaroth. Long ago, before the enemy gave us the current or modern day versions of the Babylonian and Greek practices of astrology, like horoscopes, okay? His way and learning his way when it comes to the heavens points to him, and Yeshua. When we learn man's ways under Babylonian and Greek practices, the stars are all about who? us. So you can spot the enemy real quick. Anything you're learning that makes you, it all point to you, you're in false. It's false. When it's all about you, you're in the wrong space. When it's all about him, now that's something worth looking at. So let's just make this very clear when we're respecting that there's a gospel message that's been written in the heavens, and just because we're looking at a broken version and we don't understand it, doesn't mean it's not there. Now you'll start to see that I do have a reverence and a respect for the heavens, regardless of looking at some of the shenanigans currently going on the internet right now. I've got, here's it possible that Elohim has created the heavens to measure and teach us his plan for time. YESHUA'S regarding his prophetic plan of salvation. What if the heavens above and the dress rehearsals that he's asked us to honor every year is telling you all about your Messiah? That's it. Would you be interested? Of course. That's why you're here. But there are many believers that we all know that do not know the true significance of this because it's been masked or hidden. You know, the modern day zodiac and astrology, how many Christians do you know who are like, oh no, don't look at the stars, that's all evil? You ever encountered that? Yeah. So you put up the boogeyman so that you don't actually look deeper. Do you see how it works? This is all it is. It's sleight of hand stuff. Something doesn't want you to look at the real thing or to understand it or indeed to give it reverence. And this is this true gospel in heavens. We're not going to get into the detail of this today. But what I do want to do is get into the word that's driving these practices that came down, I believe, which were taught in intimate detail in an unfallen state, in an unfallen world to Adam. And the reason why we can even talk about this today is because something was given to Adam. An intimacy and a knowledge and an understanding of an incredible created sentient being. So, let's see what he says, not what Curtis says. Genesis 1:14. Then Elohim said, let there be lights in the expanse of heaven, separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for appointed times, and for days and for years. That is pretty clear. Just because we don't know how to read the clock yet. Do everybody remember before you learned how to read time, what it was like? You'd always have to go and ask who? Mom or Dad, right? Mom and Dad, what time is it? Do you know what we're supposed to grow up that we'll be able to read time what? Ourselves, to understand this. We're supposed to mature. But if we don't mature, what's the only thing you can do in the end? If you've never learned how to read time, you got to keep going and asking. Now what if your 20-year-old came to you and they said, well, Mom, Dad, what time is it? And they're going, well, you're wearing a watch. Yeah, I know, but I don't know how to read it. Would you be happy with that? See, is these kinds of things acceptable? Signs of the heavens. Luke 21:25. Yeshua is saying here, there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. So Yeshua is now giving reference to Genesis. And on the earth dismay among nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves. And this is speaking, the disciples are asking some very serious questions about what they're to look for before the return of Messiah. And he takes them immediately to where? Isn't that interesting? Why did he do that? Why didn't he take him to the latest book by such and such? Well, they didn't have any. They didn't even have a New Testament then. The only thing they could go to was what? Yeah, to the what we call the Old Testament. That was the Word. Okay. Just in case we still don't get this, Psalms 19:1. The heavens are telling the glory of Yah, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hands. What is the glory of Yah? Our Messiah. Is there anything more glorious than Yeshua HaMashiach? Is there anything more glorious in the plan of salvation and what's been done for us, and to be able to live and to enter eternity into his dream, his plan, his fantasy, his whatever, and not ours? Could there be anything more glorious? Nothing could be more glorious than that. And the heavens are telling you of Yeshua. That is the glory of the Father. Look at this. Psalms 19:1. The heavens are telling the glory of Yah, and the expanse declaring the handiwork of his hands. Now look at that. Psalms 19:2-3. Day to day pours forth speech, and night after night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words where their voice is not heard. What? The heavens are revealing knowledge? Huh. Isn't that fascinating? So let's not have reverency of this. Or should we? Because they're revealing knowledge. Apparently there's nowhere where their voice is not heard. Oh, because it might be a canopy over our head? Can you go anywhere in the earth and not see the stars? It's pretty blatant. My clock is visible everywhere. Neat, eh? Even if we don't know how to read it. Look at this. Psalms 19:4-5. Their voice has gone out through all the earth, not some of the earth, and their utterances to the end of the world, even in New Zealand. And in them he has placed a tent for the sun. Ooh. So the sun has a tent. We're not getting into that today. Look where he goes to here. This marriage covenant illusion, which is as a bridegroom. You mean he starts to get into marriage covenant language here. This is fascinating. Coming out of his chamber, it rejoices as a strong man to run his course. This is the beautiful thing when we actually understand the cycle of the Mazzaroth. Look at this. He even seems to have some sort of intimacy with these things we're looking at every night. Psalm 147:4. And he counts the number of the stars and he gives to them, what? He gives them all names. Do you think the Father cares about what we're looking at? That's interesting. He seems to have an intimacy with this part of his creation. Job 38:31. If anybody knows, Job was having a bit of a hard time at this point. And Yah's answering him because Job was basically complaining. Not complaining. He was sharing or becoming disgruntled perhaps at the situation. Is that fair? Did he have a right to be disgruntled at that point? I think he did. Yet, this is Yah's way of comforting him. I'd say reproofing him in this moment. Can you bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion? So he's reproofing Job with something Job has no idea how to view. Or is he reproofing Job with something that Job might be familiar with? See, what makes sense? Do you think who here thinks Job might have had a pretty good darn understanding of the heavens? Yeah. In fact, Yah's even using it to do this. It's interesting how he says Pleiades here. I'm just going to show you something. Did you know that the bride, the seven churches, you know how we talk about the seven churches mentioned in Revelation? We've gone through that sort of thing. We even know the seven golden lampstand. A lot of people think of that as a Jewish symbol. It is not. It's actually the only Christian symbol I know of that's even remotely relevant to Scripture. That's the true believers. So for all the Christians that are looking for a symbol to associate themselves to, they might want to look at what the Scripture says is the actual symbol of our faith. We know from another perspective, having grown up and matured a little bit, that actually that's not just a Jewish symbol, but this is the symbol of who? The house of Israel. Yeah. This is recorded in the book of Revelation. A star cluster known as the Pleiades or the Seven Sisters. Anybody heard of that before? Just an interesting, fun little fact here. I want to share with you something. Did you know that this star cluster, interestingly enough, from a reversed mirror position, guess what? Shows the same pattern that actually how it evolved on the face of the earth. Have you ever heard the term as in heaven, right, on earth? This is interesting. Which was first? The heavens. How did they know or understand the Pleiades? So you mean the Romans just wanted to mirror themselves off of something that would be directly related in Job and Scripture? Because that conversation with Job was happening thousands of years before what we came to know of as the early church in Asia Minor. Does anybody find that just kind of interesting? It's just a fun fact. It's kind of fun though, isn't it? The early ecclesia, Revelation 1:20. As for the mystery of the 7 stars, which you saw in my right hand, the 7 golden lampstands. There it is. And the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 kahal, or the 7 ecclesia, or the 7 churches. Okay, so it's not my opinion. We just don't understand what we're seeing and what we're looking at. And yes, is the story of his people, are they even in the stars? Yes. This knowledge that's being revealed, revealed here, you answer it. Who is it? What is it? What knowledge is being revealed? This is Psalm, again, we're back at Psalm 19:2-3. Now, just to make the point. You better get this right. Of? What knowledge is being revealed here? Yeshua, our Messiah. Look at this. Psalm 89:34-37, just in case we still don't get it. I will not violate, what? My covenant. Whoa. Or alter what? The word that went forth from my lips. Once and for all I have sworn by my set apartness, my holiness, I will not lie to David. Look at this. His offspring shall endure forever. Who came from the seed line of David? His throne as long as the sun before me. Whoa. Is anybody starting to see Yeshua in here? And what's he relating it to? A covenant. Oh, wasn't that Old Testament? Somebody doesn't seem to think so in the Psalms. Look at this. And now he establishes it with this. What a wonderful way to do this. Like the moon, it shall be established for how long? Forever, as a faithful witness, a faithful servant in the skies. Salah. So he's gone and pointed to where? Did he point to the clock? As an example of something he's relating to the covenant that's pointing to Yeshua. Does anybody think the psalmist knew what he was doing? Back to Job, poor guy. 38, 32, 33. Yah's not done with him. Can you bring forth the Mazaroth in his appointed time? This is what he's saying to Job. Or can you guide Arcturus with his sons? Do you know the ordinances of heaven? The cycle of what? The stars. The ordinance of the Shamayim. Can you set the dominion thereof in earth? Ooh. It's going to guide, give even dominion to our understanding of the earth. I think the whole Pleiades thing in the early church is just a little snippet into how deep this actually goes. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in. Isn't that just some glib statement? Or is there more to this than we may know? Let 2 or 3 witnesses establish a matter. This is what Scripture says to us clearly. His word is true and it is eternal. Just because we do not know it or understand it doesn't change that fact. His Holy Spirit or His Ruach HaKodesh convicts. And He convicts of, correct, missing the mark. He gives us instruction in righteousness, the Father's righteousness, and that leads to proper discernment. Yeah, judgment. And the heavens declare His glory. You mean if these 3 things start working together, we could start to have a balanced perspective of prophetic nature of Scripture? But look at the 3 things that he's saying. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Just because people are butchering or twisting some things in this. The true prophetic timeline. What were his people instructed to honor and celebrate and know forever? What? The appointed times. They are declaring the sin for the sacrifice for our sin, a ruling king, a marriage covenant is restored. Wow, the whole thing is appointed to this, and this is the spring. Again, we're not going to go into this. I'll be going into all this stuff a little bit deeper, actually, at Sukkot. So we're to honor these. First 3 in the spring, and then in the fall we got these final 4. Well, this is the one in trumpets in the fall appointed times that people are starting to play with right now. And what if I told you that the Feast of Yom Teruah trumpets is the only thing that points to the gathering of the bride to Messiah? And now they're going to play with this one to make false divination on it. Do you think that's got my interest pricked up? Knowing the real prophetic timeline. Notice there's no need to write to you. Now listen to this, okay? Paul's speaking to the disciples, and he's saying, notice there's no need to write to the disciples regarding his appointed times, as they are studied and celebrated them their whole lives, just like we did Christmas, Easter, Halloween, whatever. Okay? 1 Thessalonians 5:1. But of the times and the appointed times, brethren, you have no need that I write to you. Wow. You mean if they had been honoring what the Father had asked them to, they would be no need to write 30,000 books and 15 million DVDs. If you just honored my ways, you wouldn't need to entertain all this garbage. That's interesting. 1 Thessalonians 5:2. Oh, by the way, this all is, I'm giving you what he spoke to me with, okay? I did everything that you can think of to understand prophetically what was going on in Scripture, everything but looked at it his way for a good portion of my believing walk. I am guilty of this, so I am sharing with you from a personal testimony of the Scriptures that he gave me to correct me. 1 Thessalonians 5:2. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of Elohim comes as a thief. Ooh, this is actually pointing to a certain appointed time. But you wouldn't know that unless you understood what you were reading in the night. Let's keep going. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. That's really fascinating, especially if you understand that from a context of believers. It's going to start to get into this whole rapture doctrine we're going to talk about next week. 1 Thessalonians 5:4, continuing on. But you brethren, are not in darkness, that this day should overtake you as a thief. Why? Why are they not in darkness? Yeah, they know what they're hearing, and they've been honoring it what? Their whole lives. Isn't that interesting? So there's a whole lost sheep of the house of Israel out there, all scattered, that haven't been honoring this, don't know to, this breaking of the condition, these 10 tribes that are gone and spread to the four corners, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. But he's speaking to those who have been. This is interesting. 1 Thessalonians 5:5. You are all children of the light and children of the day. We are not of the night or of darkness. And I have my own personal interesting opinion around this one, but I think that it could even be pointing to how we're supposed to treat the calendar. Does everybody know that on the Feast of Yom Teruah, we are looking for darkness, or are we looking for light? Yeah, the first glimmer of light. And this actually relates directly back to an ancient ceremony of the ancient Hebrew wedding model, and the groom would often come around midnight in the dark, and the only thing that you would see when the shofar was blown, the only thing you would be seeing in the distance in the wedding party was what? A torch. Yeah, or a lantern. Yeah. A glimmer of light. And that is what we're supposed to be looking for trumpets. Look at this. Thessalonians 1:5-6. Therefore, let us not sleep. So we talked at the beginning of today. Everybody seems to be asleep. We've got instructions not to be there, okay? If you are in trumpets and you are looking for the first sliver of the moon, were you asleep before that event occurred? Because it was what? Daytime. We are children of the day. Isn't that interesting? You're not going to be sleeping when you're getting ready to spot this thing. And the Hebrew day starts when? Sundown. It's there. Anybody find that fascinating? He's speaking a language for us to know. Let us therefore, and let us watch and be sober. Ladies, put down the wine. No, sorry. Just kidding. I'm there. Okay. Revelation 22:1-7. I want to finish up here. There's going to come a time, apparently, when at least the bride, I don't know if we're the bride in here. I don't know if anybody's the bride in here. I hope at least one of us is, so we have friends in high places when this is over, right? Okay. But apparently when the Ruach and the bride say come, to who? Who are they saying this to? Yeshua. This is Revelation 22:1-7. Right towards the very end of this thing we call the Bible, the revelation of Yeshua. Apparently, when the Ruach and the bride are actually done with their lives, this world is not more important nor anything in it than actually now the plan of what's coming. They finally got to the end of themselves. Well, I've had enough. I actually have learned to love you enough to learn what you've actually got planned, not everything that matters so much to me in my little vapor. Even though our vapors he cares about, even though our vapors are important, they are vapors. Our lives are temporary. That's it. Somehow they get this. And when they get this, they say together, the Spirit and the bride, Spirit and truth, because the bride's going to be holding at this point. Is she going to have some truth in her? Do you think we can be the bride without some truth in us? Spirit and truth come together, and they're worshiping, and they finally say what? Hear them say, come, and let him that is thirsty come, and whoever let him come, and take water of the tree of life freely. There's something that the Spirit and the bride are doing, and guess who now comes as a result? And apparently they're going to be doing it right on time. These internet diviners that are going on, what about these blood moons, these blood red moons? And I'm going to finish here because there was something that happened. Did anybody remember the blood red moons over the fort, right? Okay. What about these blood red moons? Why didn't the world end? Wasn't the rapture going to happen? Wasn't the tribulation going to start? Do you know that these are the three main points that were going out by the YouTube diviners, by the internet diviners at this time? And I can tell you, when we were halfway through these, my personal testimony, I couldn't believe what the body was doing. It was a real lesson to me, my goodness, just how immature we'd become. We'd gone beyond conjecturing or being watchful and alerting to something that if you understand ancient Hebrew culture, you'll understand that blood red moons are a warning to the house of Israel. There's nothing wrong with that being a warning. But when you take that and now say, this is going to happen on the last one or whatever it was. By the time we got halfway through these things, I just couldn't believe what was going on the internet to such a degree I grieved. Because I took them seriously. Still do. They were a warning to the house of Israel. They don't get chucked out just because a bunch of people twisted and butchered it. But I never told anybody that the rapture's happening on the first one or the last one or the Great Tribulation or it's the end of the world. Why? Why didn't I do that? Why would I care that it's happening, but I'm not divining an actual biblical event on them? Because I've been told not to. I've learned to reverence it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to discuss it. We're not going to shut something down. This occurred over 1949 and 50. On Passover and Tabernacles, this event of 4 blood red moons in a row on these appointed times occurred on Passover and Tabernacle, and the birth of the modern state of Israel was associated with these time frames. Now, if that's a warning to the house of Israel, was it possibly pointing that something's going on in the Middle East that should get our understanding? Not necessarily that it's a good thing. Could this have been a warning to the whole house of Israel that there's some monkey business going on? Yeah. Is it possibly that there was something coming to the land that would call themselves Jews and who are Is it possible? And if we know who orchestrated this and who put it in place into the UN and the very history behind the Balfour Declaration, a lot of things, I promise you, do your homework. And when you do, this will start to get interesting. Is there a Kabbalist calendar that's very aware of the biblical calendar? Yes. War of Independence occurred shortly thereafter. So over this time, we had the birth of a modern state of something that was put into play. The Middle East had been chopped up quite dramatically in the early mid-20s, what you'd know as the modern Middle East landscape. And then this came into being. But all of those other countries that were created in the Middle East, they didn't get a set of tetrads. So there's two ways you can take those tetrads. Most of the Christian Zionist or dispensational view will say that's proof of biblical prophecy. I'm looking at it going, that might be proof of Yah's clock warning us about something. Do you see the difference? Then we get 1967, Passover, Tabernacles, 1968, Passover and Tabernacles, or roughly thereabouts, depending on how you want to argue the calendars. There was a 6-day war. Some incredible things did happen here. And Israel recaptured Jerusalem, got control of it, at least from a governance point of view in 1968. Again, that's starting because does anybody know that Jerusalem features very highly in end times prophecy? Something's got a hold of it now. There was a warning going out. Interesting way to view the tetrads, is it not? Just giving you another perspective. It was not shared. 2014, 2015, this is what we all saw. I'd suggest to you, and this is what put it in codified it for me and why I wanted to speak and to make sure that we still treated the heavens with some reverence. Again, this event happened. From what we know since the time of Yeshua, the tetrads occurring 4 in a row on the appointed times has only occurred 8 times in the last 2,000 years. Guess who gets to play with the heavens? Does Hasatan get to play with the wandering stars and the stars? Right. We just saw very clearly that the heavens, who controls the heavens explicitly? Yah does. So I don't think he's playing games. The question is, did I know how to read the clock? Do you see the difference? What if I'd been polluted by a certain way to view it, and then that's what I went out in my prophecy understandings? Do you see? See, Hasatan can't control that clock. He can't take away the blood that justifies me. He can't take away me hungering and thirsting for truth. What's the only thing he can do with me? Muddy the waters. Because I am not going to go against Yah knowingly. But he could get me going against him unknowingly. But I'd have to be deceived to do that. I believe here one of the most significant parts of the last one of these that occurred, and this was not so long ago, that we saw a warning to Israel, the people. If my definition of Israel is people, then I view Israel as being where right now on the earth? To the 4 corners of the earth. I'm not just saying they're only in a small piece of dirt in the Middle East in a modern landscape. Now, I'm not saying they're not there too. But what I'm saying is that Israel is actually the fulfillment of major prophecies in the Torah. And this is scattered across the world. Do you know what was so fascinating about this last set and why I took it so seriously? Not only did I know who I was in my identity, but the umbra of these things covered the whole earth. Everybody on earth got to see at least one. That was astoundingly unique. Oh, Israel's been spread to the 4... Oh, you mean these things? If it was speaking to the house of Israel, everybody on earth got to see one. If you were speaking to a people that were scattered to the 4 corners of the earth, fulfilling major Bible prophecy, do you think that maybe your sign to them might have to cover the whole earth? These get staggering odds after a while, so let's not take away the reverence of these things. Are they still a warning? Perhaps, yes. That warning didn't say, oh, well, okay, the warning ends because the day after the last tetrad, the world didn't blow up. Oh, well. That's what people did. By the way, this is what happened. Because very few people knew to understand the reverence of these things or what they made. So when the last one didn't mark the end of the world as they saw fit, or whatever it was that somebody had promised them, or the rapture didn't happen, or the great tribulation didn't start, what did they just do with the appointed times in the heavens? Out goes the baby. Just throw that little sucker right into the drain. See if it swims. Look, let's be wise servants. Let's not butcher or twist his signs in the heavens or his appointed times or throw them out. This is not the wise part of the servants. However, let's not divine and turn them into something that we shouldn't either. And if we can find a river perspective and be have a balanced view on this, then we can take a look at what all this hype's going to be about, and we're going to look at this in part 3. On August 21st, 2017, the most spectacular solar eclipse in U.S. history is about to happen. When is this happening? The total solar eclipse will cross the continental USA from coast to coast, and that is happening next month. Now you know why we've interrupted Ecclesiastes. Because a total solar eclipse was actually a warning to the world, if you understand how the ancient Hebrews viewed it. Now, just coincidentally enough, this is happening 33 days ahead of September 23rd, 2017, on the Feast of Yom Teruah, trumpets. On the appointed times of trumpets, there's a very interesting alignment in the heavens that is famously mentioned in the book of Revelation in chapter 12. This is what all the hype is about. But we have had blood red moons. We're having a very serious solar eclipse event. And now we've got this. Okay. Does it have my attentions from a reverence point of view? Yes. Do I know what I'm about to see on September 23rd, 2017, or indeed August 21st, 2017? No. And I'm not going to divine with it. What I can tell you is I know the appointed times. You brethren know very well the appointed times. Guess what I do know is not happening on the 23rd, 2017. I did a show on it last week. The gathering of the bride. I 100% can say that confidently because I understand a little bit better a watch from our Creator. That's why I can confidently say that. It's got nothing to do with arrogance. It's got nothing to do with attacking the people. It's got nothing to do with anything. It's got everything to do to make a point well ahead of time. When the rapture does not happen on the 24th, September 2017, there may be somebody that might be interested who's not interested in listening to me now, may be interested on the 24th. Because there are people promising more than any other event is the rapture of the church. And there is a whole theology that is driving that, and that's what we're going to touch on next week so that at least you understand what not only might be in your own house, but in the house of others. Because as you start to be a witness to others, you're going to be honoring the moedim. You are going to be taking the heavens seriously. And you don't want people that are being burnt and crying wolf and all this other garbage that's going on, all of a sudden casting that upon you, do you? Oh yeah, those guys, they talked all about this. Oh yeah, they were doing this. Do you know that most of these people that are divining on YouTube, and this is what really irritates me, there is no reverence for the appointed times. They're not even honoring them themselves. They don't care about his Sabbaths. They don't care about his ways, but they're quite happy to use the Hebrew terms and the names and make his watch what? To invalidate something because there is no reverency. Now that starts to get me a little bit angry. Sorry. I know I'm being a bit of a, my passion gets the better of me, but I told you I was a little frustrated and resentful doing these whole things. So, okay, calm down. Let us be, just let us be a people that are a witness in all areas. And we can be a good witness in these areas too, right? That's all. Let us at least be that so that we can, do the right thing as we move forward and, hopefully be pleasing in the Father's eyes, even when it comes to the signs of the heavens and certainly how we look at Bible prophecy. Is that fair? Okay. Next week's going to get real interesting, and I'm going to try not get so passionate. But I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. Next week is a subject matter that really gets me up and down. So, but my brethren, I'm sure on Wednesday are going to get me in line, and they'll sort me out before Shabbat. Thanks, everyone. We'll go into the Q&A now.